So I think the programme that was sent out yesterday was Bruce Adley, who's my director, who was supposed to be in this. So I'm a low-rent Bruce. I'm the deputy director for Transforming Foundation Industries. And I'm going to be an even lower rent Tatiana, who unfortunately can't make it later today as well. So you're going to have me for quite a period. I'm going to take you through the introduction to the challenge, some which I think most of you will have seen before. And then talk around the scope around, we're getting down to the business end now, of the scope around what we're looking for within this competition. Just a couple of opening slides. So UK Research and Innovation is a £7 billion organisation made up of 7 research councils, Research England, which was part of HEFCE, and Innovate UK. And we're there to encourage and support innovation and research across the UK economy. We ultimately are there to turn taxpayers' money into research, knowledge, and finally back into taxpayers' money through innovation. In terms of numbers, so say about 7 billion a year, these slides are slightly older. We fund all the universities in the country and a huge number of other institutions, catapults, laboratories and the like. But just to point out on this slide, the reason that I wanted to put it up here was really the bits in red at the bottom there. A couple of years ago, a commitment was made by Philip Hammond, the then Chancellor, to increase the amount of funding for innovation research by 7 billion by 2020, 2021. And that's largely by a manifesto promised by the current administration to increase R&D and innovation spend as part of the UK economy from 1.7 to 2.4% GDP. What does that mean? Well, that's actually the largest increase in spend in innovation in post-war history in the UK, which is a massive increase, a large challenge, and one that's largely centred on what UK Research and Innovation is there to actually help develop. Now, some of that will come from UK government funding, but also some of that will come from industry as well, hopefully through encouragement increasing the amount that they're going to spend on innovation in the UK. Part of that uplifting funding is really the reason we're in the room today. The Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund was developed in order to set challenges to encourage spend around specific areas which were important to society. So this wasn't around technological challenges per se, it was on societal challenges. And this is really why Transforming Foundation Industries ISCF challenge is around. It's around a specific set of challenges facing industry. So foundation industries, 6 sectors: glass, ceramics, cement, metals, paper, and the bulk chemical sector make up about £40 billion of UK economy and employ, I can't even read it, 500,000 people in the UK. Significant picture of London Bridge, and Tower Bridge, and the Shard on there, largely because although certainly the messages we send out to people who are not in the know, these sectors are not very exciting. It's not quantum technology, it's not aerospace, but actually you look around you and everything around you has been built by the foundation industries. It's core to our economy, and that is really important. It's a really important message to say to people that we are important and what we do is important, and we can't get away without steel. We can't get away without concrete. These things are core to our modern society. Problem with that is that as a series of sectors, they generate 10% of the UK CO2, by far and away the largest industrial polluters. And frankly, that has to stop. You know, if we forget policy, just think from a societal perspective, we must change how these industries produce vital products to our society, but do it in such a way that's environmentally sustainable. And it's also quite difficult because in the landscape you operate in, this is an international commoditized set of sectors. So you're competing, in a lot of cases, with newer equipment from a lower cost-based economy. So there's a huge amount of problems around these sectors. And so this is really the seed from which we're trying to set what we're trying to do here. And this fundamentally explains what our challenge is about. In that we're trying to transform these industries as part of a larger series of interventions to make sure that they remain internationally competitive and that they can manufacture the products vital for our economy in an environmentally sustainable way. Now, important to break a few things up there. When we talk about internationally competitive, you're in an international landscape. If you're not internationally competitive, then you're going to end up losing market share in the UK. And so it's not necessarily about going and selling steel to China. It's about preventing Chinese steel being sold in the UK. And so that is what we're trying to do, to ensure we have a native and sustainable market share within the foundation industries. And clearly, in an environmentally sustainable way. What we're not talking around here, and I will be mentioning this over and over again, this is not around carbon capture and storage and utilisation. This is around efficiency, savings in resources, savings in energy, which make the industry more sustainable, both sustainable in an environmental sense and sustainable in a business sense. So with this, our challenge area has got a £66 million budget, matched by industry, making £150 million total budget over 4.5 years. And we've broken that down into 5 separate areas. I'm going to just really quickly run through these 5 separate areas. So the first one is around a pilot facility. So we recognise that trying some new innovative technologies on scale is difficult, it's expensive, and there's not necessarily all the kit is available in the UK. Particularly around the glass area, we're looking to provide a £15 million investment around a glass facility in the northwest of England. And that really is to enable that scale-up piece. I suspect those involved in plant can recognise that you don't want to try things at scale for the first time out. It's expensive, it's difficult, and if you get it wrong, that always has knock-on implications for further production. So we're looking to do that investment around the northwest. The one really, and this is really in the room, is we're going to be hosting we're going to be running a series of competitions. About just around half our overall funding will be spent looking at collaborative research and development and demonstration type activities, which are project based over the next 4.5 years. Currently programming 4 competitions that might change slightly depending on the profile of the spend. Key to that is really the core to what we're trying to do. It is sustainability, competitiveness, but also addressing those cross-cutting sector themes. Something we asked about is why we're talking on the foundation industries. Because individually the sectors, although large, weren't getting as much traction from policy as it would be together. Together they're much harder to ignore. So as a foundation industries, you're as big as the aerospace sector. That's really important to recognise, because then suddenly politicians take note, and that's where the money comes from ultimately, is we need to ensure that you guys can work together. But also, by working cross-sector, you can solve cross-sectoral issues. You can cross-pollinate ideas from the ceramic sector and the glass sector about furnace design or around recycling heat or recycling materials. And also, you can learn from each other about how to develop. We recognise that there are some sectors which are very much more advanced in how they do research in the UK, whereas other sectors, because largely they're foreign-owned, they might do the research abroad. What this will do is help by pulling them together as a single cohort. It will help pull through those ideas and start to really get investment back in the UK in research and innovation, particularly in areas where we don't currently see very much. That last one was very much innovation-based from a company perspective. This one is very much more around innovation-based from an academic perspective. We're looking to invest around £5 million in a prosperity partnership. This will be very much in collaboration with industry, but kind of academic-led. And this is really recognising that our academic base is superb. We spend a lot of money on research in our academic base. But what we need to do is we need to essentially monetize that investment. So get that investment in knowledge back from universities back into an industrial setting. So although it will be an academic-led piece, it will be very much outward focused rather than necessarily on blue sky research. So we recognise foundation industries is still, is an embryotic term. And what we're trying to do is to get you guys to see the benefits of working together. So we're going to spend a lot of time and a lot of effort developing some papers which give you guys a sector identity, and also using the KTN and EN and actually our colleagues within the individual trade associations to actually start to get you guys working and talking together, and so that you can start to build a voice and start to build momentum around this idea. And finally, recognizing that there are some, early companies out there but the access to finance is quite challenging. We're going to be partnering. We're looking to invest around 10 million plus a co-fund from private equity in early startup or companies who are looking to make that leap to commercialization. So this is, traditional private equity, debt equity lending, where we can provide, with partners from the finance sector, basically 100% funding for projects for you. But obviously, that requires you to partner with a private equity who are going to want some stake in your businesses. So really, the overall piece is we're looking at the scale-up piece with a big piece of capital. We're looking at doing projects through CR&D. We're looking at how we can get the academic base to work more readily with industry to kind of pull through those academic pieces. We're looking to see you guys have an identity and actually kind of drive some non-innovation barriers around developing technologies. And then we're also looking to scale up fast growth companies. So it's quite an interlocked piece that we're trying to do here to actually help shape and help push you guys forward in developing technologies that are more sustainable and that help your business sustainability going forward. I've got questions here, but I recognise what Robert has just mentioned, that I think we're leaving questions till the end, are we? Right. So this is where I would normally sit down, and and Tatiana would stand up, and I'm not a Portuguese lady, so I will continue on. Unfortunately, she can't join us today as a family emergency at home. So I will now talk to you around the scope of this collaborative research and development competition. So to give you a little bit of the background, to flash through the background really, we've been talking around kind of projects and understanding what industry wants now for 14, 15 months. In fact, give or take, I've certainly some of my initial conversation with Steel guys, I've been doing this for over 2 years now, looking at exactly what you want. So we're finally getting to the point where we're going to be able to let you guys put pen to paper and apply for some funding, which is all really good. Certainly from an ISCF perspective, we started working on a deep dive workshop in September last year, and then we held a series of events over the last 12 months to really start to refine down what it is you want, what the scope of the competitions would look like, and really what the scope of the overall challenge should look like. On the back of that, we the KTN published a couple of reports which really were to test the water and to understand, are we in the right ballpark? Is it the right stuff that we should be looking at? And really, was the appetite from industry to be involved with this competition, with a type of competition around the foundation industries? So, to cut to really probably my most important slide, I can't say for Bimba's piece later on, but certainly to talk around what we've got available. So there's up to £5 million available in this competition to address really any challenge, technology challenge associated with improving energy or resource efficiency within the foundation industries. Really broad, we made it as broad as possible, and I'll explain a little bit why in a second. Key to this, though, is the cross-sector applicability. So we're looking for cross-sector collaboration. We are looking for projects which are short and sharp, maximum 12 months in length, really getting some, we changed the wording of this competition from feasibility because we wanted it to be fast start. We recognise that some of these projects might not be feasibility studies, they might be much nearer market. But it is around making sure that we get results quickly. So that's why we put a deadline of kind of 12 months to get these projects off. Eligible costs between £50,000 and £500,000. And also the deadline for submission of the applications is the 5th of February. I'm just making sure that that's right. Quite a long way away. Reason is because you guys, hopefully, and this is actually a hope, that some of you guys are probably new to this process. So we want to give you plenty of time to think about it and understand it. It's hard to do bullet number 2 on that list, which is a cross-sector collaborative piece. We know it's difficult, but the reason that we want to do it is because it is going to give we think that you're better together. We think that there is an opportunity to learn from each other. And ultimately, part of our remit is to understand those cross-cutting themes and address those cross-cutting themes where we can get the most maximum value for essentially UK taxpayers' investment. The reason that we are so broad is because we recognise that's a difficult ask. And it is around getting good projects which be up and running without being too constrained on the technology. As long as it focuses on energy or resource efficiency, that is where our focus will be. So, going kind of the next level down, in terms of the project, as I said, between 50,000 and £500,000 must be collaborative. So you can't do this on your own, because cross-sector doesn't, even if you feel you're cross-sector and right, we do want that collaboration. We would like the project to start really by summer 2020, just for the time frame of the projects. And also that means that you'll be ready then towards the end of those projects to bid in for more funding for other competitions. As a lead organisation, if you think about taking the plunge and running this, you must be UK registered, you must be a business, it cannot be an academic. You can be a research or technology organisation to lead this with some special special caveats. And clearly, and 2 other key points is you must carry out most of the project work in the UK. There are some exceptions if you need to do specific subcontract work. And you must look to exploit it for the benefit of the UK. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you must deploy it in the UK, but if you're a UK-based technology provider, most of the IP is going to reside in the UK. If you're going to exploit it all over the world, that's brilliant for us because that is essentially changing our trade balance. That is what we're about. It's not around necessarily exploiting purely in the UK. It's around where the benefit resides of that technology development. And really that goes for virtually the entire project team as well. So within the project team more widely, because this is a collaborative, and a collaboration is 2 separate entities. So it can't be a parent company and one of its other companies, because that's not 2 separate entities, it's the same company. So the projects must contain an SME. Also worth noting that if you are owned by another company, you might be an SME in your own, but if you're owned by the other company, it's the parent company that determines whether you're an SME or not. So if you're owned by Microsoft, you're not an SME. And there must be at least 2 businesses of any size from at least 2 foundation industries. So you can have as many as you want, but the minimum is you must have 2 separate foundation industries being involved, either as a technology provider or as an end customer or another interest within the overall project. And it must be a meaningful collaboration. It can't be, if you've got a £500,000 project, 499,000 is going to steel and 1,000 is going to cement. That doesn't really count as a meaningful collaboration. And again, it's all got to be UK-based businesses who take funding. Academic institutions can be involved, as can charity, public sector, and RTOs. RTOs can lead, but there are some special conditions over how they lead. In terms of scope of the overall technology scope, as I say, we're as broad as possible. Well, we have given some guidance it helps, I think, you guys, and it certainly helps us. As I say, the scope is around the foundation industries. It's around the productivity, competitiveness, the environmental sustainability, and it is around supply chains as well, your direct supply chains. The good example is we wouldn't, for example, be looking at resource efficiency in a building that just happens to have cement in it. It is very much focused on the cement resource efficiency bit. Or we won't be looking at developing new Qashqai. However, the steels could well be within scope of these competitions. Now, that is a vague boundary, and if you think you like on that boundary, do talk to us, talk to the KTN, because we will help you and give you an actual ruling about whether you're in or out of scope. Because the last thing we want to do is good projects to be ruled out of scope, because it wastes your time and annoys you. So in terms of the areas that we're interested in, it is around resource and process efficiency. It must be a common challenge for at least a couple of the foundation industries. Really, we're looking at anything that you're, around those processes. So it could be around your feedstocks, any inputs, any of your production. It could be around, the materials themselves, or it could even be around the product development, as long as that product development is cross-sectoral. For example, coatings could be an interesting area around that. We were initially scratching our head about whether you could get cross-sectoral from a product development perspective. Coatings could be a potential avenue for that, as could, say, for example, looking at new business models. Also, and this is important, so this is something that is that some of the techno-economic assessment of a new product development can also be involved. So it doesn't necessarily mean about building something. It could be a more feasibility around whether something is technically possible or not. Because we know that there are ideas where people are starting to come together and go, well, we don't even know we need to develop anything. It could be much more around what we really want to understand is could we work together to do this? Because we're, again, recognising the foundation industries, pulling you guys together is quite a challenge in itself. People have seen these slides before, it's just really to give you a flavour and understand exactly the types of areas that we're interested in. So we've got 4 areas, and these were grouped really from some of the work we did earlier in the year in the workshops with the various stakeholders. So kind of energy optimization, process optimization, looking at waste recycling and symbiosis, and new product and service development. So within energy optimization, we're looking at heat or energy storage being scope, as will be technologies, to recover low-grade heat. Or we're reducing, any process which reduces energy, chemical transformations. For example, new catalysis could potentially be within scope of that. Within process optimization, process not just about materials, it could be around water. So water, as long as it was within the scope of the foundation industries, and as a benefit, could well be within that scope. We're looking to improve the efficiency of the manufacturing, and that could include things such as digital. So not necessarily developing new digital tools, but implementing those digital tools around resource or energy efficiency could well be within scope of this challenge. Within waste and recycling, so this is around obviously the material coming in, so actually reusing material more efficiently generally reduces environmental impact. Also looking at industrial symbiosis. Could your waste be used in another product? We talked extensively to the cement guys who said, we've got a list of various elements that if you've got in your waste stream, we will have. So there's an opportunity there to look at that, to look and talk to them. And then finally, on new products and service development. So, key to here, are the new materials themselves, but also we are looking at new business models. So if you've got a new way to rent something or a new way to get back some materials which are really key to your process that require a different way of doing business, this is something that could also be within scope of this. As I said, the scope is broad for a reason, but there are certain caveats on what we will not fund. I've said up front, Carbon capture and storage is out. Anything where we are looking to essentially put a pipe on the end of a smokestack and look at how to store that underground is not within the scope of this challenge. Lots of reasons for that. Another reason is a £150 million investment going on in a different ISCF challenge area. So I can point you that way if you've got interest in that. And I think it was an £800 million announcement was made this morning as well. Also, I've been saying, I think I've said foundation industries maybe 50 times already. This is focused on the foundation industries. It's those 6 industries that this challenge is focused on, and their immediate supply chains. Very high upstream supply chains we're not interested in. The other end, we're not looking at mining and quarrying or kind of pulling material out of the ground. It is really around that middle bit of the supply chain that we're focused on here. We want it to be that cross-sector piece, and so if it's just a single sector or there's no obvious link with the other sectors, then we will be then there will be ruled as out of scope. So we must be cross-sectoral, and you must explain how that cross-sectoral piece is working within your application. Interestingly, we're trialing is that skills we see as a big piece important. It actually comes out in everything we do. So we always want to understand how skills needs will be met within your application. We're not looking to fund big capital fund within this piece. So obviously, if you're looking for a piece of kit to help you do the project, that's fine within the rules set out within our competitions. What we're not looking at is to build a new facility within this. This is around projects to deliver something. In terms of our funding limits, so I think they're actually as standard as we get. I know that other ISCFs have been tinkering around with these funding limits, but they're 70, 60, 50, depending on the size of your organisation and depending on the type of research that you're doing. So if you're doing industrial research, which is earlier stage innovation, then you get quite generous contributions. If you're doing later stage work, it is you get lower intervention rates from us at 45, 35, 25, depending on the size of your organisation. And I think if you have a mix in a project, you do the intervention as a mix. So if half is industrial research, half is experimental development, you have to do a complicated Excel spreadsheet to pull that through. Important what it says at the bottom there, RTOs can get a share of up to 50% of the overall project, and they can charge at 100%. So these can be quite RTO driven. This is early stage, again, because we recognise the benefit that the research and technology organisations can have in the room in pulling different sectors together. It's their jobs largely to do that type of collaborative piece. And so do talk to them. Obviously that reduces the amount of funding that you will get if you're a company though. I think I'm nearly there. So Robert is going to talk more about the support, but it is important to recognise, and actually we're really hopeful that we're going to get new entrants in here. It's not just going. We want the guys who we more than welcome guys who want to apply for funding, who've applied for Innovate UK funding before, but we're also hopeful we're going to get new entrants. Now, Innovate UK has a sister organisation whose one of their core rules is to help you guys apply for funding. So they won't write the application for you, but they will give you good pointers in how to get a good application. So they will look at it and they will say, actually, you need to strengthen up this bit or that bit to make it more important. So do talk to the Knowledge Transfer Network. Really important. It's free consultancy, essentially. Well, it's not free. We're paying for it, but it is free to you, consultancy. Anything on scope or clarification, we're happy to have an offline chat, but if you want a copper bottom, this is the response that actually is important. You need to send it to support@innovateuk.ukri.org. That then just goes through our CRM system, so it's there and you've got a ruling. So that if you then submit something and say, oh, well, that's out of scope, you've got a piece of paper that says, no, it isn't, because you said it wasn't of X, Y, and Z. It's really important if you've got something we think, oh, I'm on the borderline here, then it comes back to us. We've already got some queries coming in that we're having a conversation with the team because we recognise there's some fuzzy edges here. And we're happy for you to push those fuzzy edges, and we'll start to make it more concrete as we go along. As I say, I'm not Tatiana, but that's Tatiana's email address. I've got cards. You can get hold of me anyway. And I'm now passing over to Bimba, who's going to take you through the more important bit, which is the nuts and bolts of how to exactly apply.
Thank you, Ben. So I'm going to run you through the eligibility criteria for this competition and then talk about how you actually apply. So the IFS, the Innovation Funding Service. I'll then run you through what you do if you're successful and applications. So in terms of the eligibility criteria, Ben's already covered these quite comprehensively. It's really worth bearing in mind that if your proposal doesn't fit these eligibility criteria, then it won't be sent out for assessment. You won't receive any feedback on it, so please bear them in mind. IFS doesn't check your proposal against these criteria. That's entirely up to you. So please refer back to them when you're writing your proposal and make sure you're clear on what's required of you. So this competition does allow you to resubmit a proposal that you've previously submitted to Innovate UK. So the definition that we use of a resubmission is on screen there for you now for your reference. You're only able to submit any proposal twice. So if you've submitted once, received feedback, then you can resubmit. If you've been through that process twice, then you wouldn't be eligible to submit again, and you would need to make some significant changes. This is an overview of the types of organisations that Innovate UK fund. So you'll be asked to define yourselves within the Innovation Funding Service. As Ben touched on, the level of funding that you will be able to claim depends on what you input. So please make sure that you're familiar with these definitions and make sure that you select the correct category, as this can have an impact on the funding that you receive. It's worth bearing in mind just on this slide that Innovate UK use the EU definition of a business, so there's a link available. These slides will be available if you need any clarification on that. In terms of state aid legislation, in order to be able to receive state aid, you must pass the undertakings and difficulty test if you are successful. So this only applies to limited liability companies that are more than 3 years old. If you have a parent company, then the test can be performed on your parent or holding company. However, it is your responsibility to make sure that you are eligible before you submit your application. Please bear in mind that as part of our viability and eligibility checks, we will be carrying out this test on you if applicable, and if you fail, then you wouldn't be able to proceed any further in the competition. Innovate UK aren't able to provide specific advice on state aid, so you would need to seek independent legal advice. However, if you have any general questions on state aid, then please feel free to contact us. And then these next couple of slides are just an overview. So this competition is being run under Article 25 of the General Block Exemption Regulation. These are just for your reference if you want to refer back to them at any time when you're submitting your application, or if you have any queries relating to the kind of activities that they refer to. So in terms of the participation rules, the aim of state aid is to optimise the level of funding available to businesses and to recognise the importance of the research base to projects. So as Ben touched on, the maximum level of 50% of project cost is shared by all research organisations within the project. So if you have one research organisation, they can claim up to 50%. If you have more than one, then that 50% is shared between them. Well, that's off-putting. Please bear in mind that you can make as many applications to this competition as you wish, but if you are successful in multiple applications, you will have to provide justification that you can support all projects that you're involved in within the predefined timescales. So Ben talked about collaboration. As he discussed, we want to see evidence of genuine collaboration within your proposal. So we want to see within your response to the questions and later on within your collaboration agreement, if you're successful, what each of the partners will bring to the consortium and what they propose to provide to your project that can't be provided by one of the other project members. And these are just a reminder of the key dates for this competition. So the competition opened on the 28th of October. The submission deadline is noon on the 5th of February. I'll talk about it a bit later on, but please bear in mind that that submission deadline is absolute. We're not able to grant any extensions, and IFS will close automatically at 12:01 on that date. We're then aiming to inform you if you're successful or unsuccessful on the 20th of March 2020. So in terms of the Innovation Funding Service, if you've previously applied to a competition with Innovate UK, then you may well be familiar with this. So you're able to search for your competition on IFS. This will take you through a series of steps, and when you get to the second screenshot on the screen there, if you just click Start an Application. If you are a new applicant, then you'll need to register for an account before you can submit. If you've previously submitted an application to us or you have an account, then you can just log in and start your proposal from there. So UK-based businesses will be asked to provide their company's house number. There is a company's house lookup available. This really speeds up the process later on when finance are carrying out their viability and eligibility checks. So it's not a mandatory field, but if you can provide us that information up front, it really helps your project get through project setup more quickly. So it's important that you do fill in that information if you have it. So moving on to the application itself, you'll be asked to fill in project details. So these are just some kind of overview details about your project. So the application team, the timescales, the research category, innovation area, and if your proposal is a resubmission or not. You'll also be asked to provide a summary of your project, so describe what it is that your proposal is trying to achieve and what is innovative about it. You'll then be asked for a public description. Now, it's important to bear in mind that if your project is successful, this will be published, so please don't include any commercially sensitive information or anything that you wouldn't want to see in the public domain. You'll then be asked to explain how your project fits within the scope of the competition. So as Ben said, if your project is deemed to be out of scope, then it won't be eligible for funding. This section isn't scored, but it really helps the assessors in terms of setting an overview of your project and providing key details. And then the application form itself, if you're familiar with the Innovate UK standard 10-question application form, this is very similar with the addition of question 11, which is skills. So you'll see that appendices are available for 4 of the questions. So for question 2, the appendix is optional. And then for questions 3, 7, and 8, the appendix is mandatory. Detailed guidance is available via AFS regarding what we're expecting you to provide within your response to each question, and also about the format and information that we're requesting in those appendices. So in terms of your finances, so to claim funding, your business does not have to be registered with Companies House when you apply. However, if you're a startup, your business will have to be registered before you can receive any funding. So you're unable to claim funding if you're an overseas organisation, so your company number would begin with FC. If your organisation is set up as a branch, so your company number begins with BR, or if you are based in Jersey, so your company number would begin with JE. And then to run you through a breakdown of what you'll be asked to provide in terms of finances. So the first section is labour. So there's some eligible and ineligible costs listed there on screen. Please make sure that if you are claiming any labour costs, then these are for staff who are working directly on the project, so their time must be broken down, and you can only claim for time that is directly attributable. They must be paid through your PAYE scheme as well. You can't include dividends, bonuses, or any non-productive time within this. And again, these will be reviewed if your project is successful, and you'd be asked to explain any costs if they seem excessive or they don't seem to quite add up with what you're saying within your response. So within this section, you need to enter the role within the project and the gross annual salary, the number of staff, and the days that they will spend on the project. IFS will then automatically calculate the total cost for you. So if you have multiple people in the same role on the same average salary, enter this in the role within project field. If you have a part-time employee working on the project, you should enter their costs as a full-time equivalent. And you can adjust the working days per year from the default if this is different for your project. So moving on to overheads. So Innovate UK define overheads as additional costs and operational expenses incurred directly a result of the project. So you can have either direct or indirect overheads, and these are listed on screen here for you to refer back to if you need any assistance when you're completing your application. You can select from 3 options that you can see on screen when you're calculating your overheads. So you can either choose no overheads, you can choose to have your overheads as 20% of your labour costs, or you can choose to calculate them manually. And if you choose this third option, you'll be provided with a basic spreadsheet, which you'll be asked to fill in. So in terms of materials, this is fairly self-explanatory, but the key point with this slide is please make sure that you provide sufficient detail to allow our finance team to establish what it is that you're using and why you're using it. So enter and describe what materials you intend to use on the project, the volume, and the cost. So if you just, for example, put consumables £500,000, this doesn't really provide us with enough detail, and you'd certainly be asked to provide more information on what exactly it was that you were purchasing as part of your project if your project was successful. Again, the more information that you can provide us with at this point, the better in terms of getting your project through project setup quickly. So please try and be as accurate as possible when you're filling in these sections. So it's worth bearing in mind in terms of materials, that any items that you would usually depreciate as per your company's policy should be listed in capital usage and not on this materials tab. And also that materials that are supplied by associated companies or subcontracted from other consortium members must be listed at cost and cannot include any profit element or margin. So in terms of capital usage, so you'll need to describe how you're using the equipment, whether it is a new piece of equipment that you're purchasing specifically for the project or it's an existing asset, the new purchase cost, how long you are depreciating it over, and the residual value at the end of the project. All these calculations will need to be in line with your own accounting practices, so please bear this in mind when you're filling in this section. In terms of subcontractors, you will be asked to provide justification if you are using subcontractors, particularly if your subcontracting costs are high. So you would be asked to explain within your application why it is that you're using a subcontractor and why that work can't be completed by one of your project partners. Again, if you're subcontracting to a parent or sister company, please ensure that you list at cost and do not include any profit within this section. You can then claim for any travel and subsistence that is essential to the project. Please break down your costs in these sections into travel, accommodation, and subsistence. Please bear in mind that only travel at economy class can be claimed. If you have an annual trip to visit the parent company of your organisation, then this cannot be claimed as part of your project costs. And then finally, there is an other cost section, which you can use for anything that doesn't fit into any of the previous more detailed sections. Please make sure if you are using this section that you don't double count any costs. So if you've allocated something in one of the other previous sections, then please don't also put it in here. So examples of costs that you could put in this section are training that is directly attributable to the project, licensing new technologies, or patent filing costs for new IP. So as I've already said, the funding level that you will be awarded will depend on the answers that you've provided, dependent on the type of organisation and the type of research that you are undertaking. And funding is calculated by project participant. IFS will automatically calculate this based on the answers that you've input. So if you get it wrong, then it can significantly impact upon the level of funding you received. And as that slide that David presented earlier showed, the levels vary quite a lot. So it's important that in order to maximise your chances of getting the funding that's available, you fill in those sections correctly. And then this is a very similar slide to the one David displayed earlier, which just outlines the different levels of funding that you could receive depending on the type of organisation you are and the type of research that you're carrying out. If you have any academic partners within your organisation, then they will need to fill in a JES form, which they should already be familiar with. This collects finances and verifies them for us and will need to be submitted as part of your application. It needs to have a with council status, and we can't accept forms that don't fulfil those criteria. So this is just a brief overview of the JES form. So they'll need to enter the TSB contribution column figures and make sure that these match what you've put within your own application form. So please make sure that the JES form and the application form match each other before you submit. As the lead applicant, it would be your responsibility to make sure that those figures match. If they don't, then it will lead to more questions during the project setup phase. So JES also asks for some other details, such as the justification of resources and the pathways to impact. Full details of these are available on the JES system. It's worth bearing in mind that Innovate UK don't have access to the JES system. It's not something that we're able to really resolve queries about. So if you do have any issues, then please contact JES directly, and their details are available on this slide. So once you've completed the application form and you're ready to submit, there are a couple of checks that you can do to make sure that your application is complete prior to submitting. So please bear in mind that IFS doesn't check your finances against the eligibility criteria for the competition. So please make sure that your total project costs are within those figures that David mentioned earlier, so between 50 and 500,000. Ben, sorry, don't know where David came from. It is the responsibility of the lead applicant to make sure that all sections are complete. We've had some issues recently with project partners not completing terms and conditions. So as the lead applicant, you would have oversight of the entirety of your project. So you should be able to see if any project members have anything outstanding. If they do, please make sure that they complete all their sections in a timely manner. The deadline is absolute. And if they haven't completed those sections, you won't be able to press submit on your application. This is a graph that shows how many submissions we received just before midday on a submission deadline. We do see a very high spike in traffic kind of from 11:45 onwards. Please bear in mind that we do recommend that you submit your application early in order that we have time to help you if you encounter any technical issues. Most people leave it till the last minute, but unfortunately that does mean that quite often we get applications that sort of are 95% plus complete that just can't be submitted because they have a technical fault at the last minute. If it's not something that is our responsibility, then I'm afraid we won't be able to help you. So in terms of the assessment process, so if your application is deemed to be eligible and in scope, it will be sent out for assessment. So this will be reviewed by 5 independent assessors who will score each of the questions and provide feedback to you. So in terms of what the assessors are looking for, they want clarity, detail, and justification within your answer. And they also want to see that you're answering the question that we've asked and that you've provided the information that we've asked for. So even if you write the best answer in the world, if it's not actually answering the question that we've asked, then you won't score particularly highly. In terms of the feedback that you receive, please bear in mind that this does come from 5 different independent assessors, and therefore they may have different viewpoints on your application and may have picked up on different things within your responses. It is intended to be constructive in nature and to highlight both the strong and the weak areas of your application. However, sometimes their comments can appear a little bit contradictory if they've come from a different background and have therefore focused on slightly different areas within your application. In terms of the scores themselves, so we review scores and feedback to check the assessors are adhering to our guidelines and are scoring fairly. So if we feel a score is unjust and not supported by the feedback that's been provided, we may remove that score as an outlier and recalculate the overall total for the application. So in terms of your feedback, this will be provided to the lead applicant via IFS. So you'll see your average score for that particular question together with the comments that the assessors have provided. I'm nearly there. In terms of if your project is successful, you will be required to go through project setup. So this is 8 steps that you are required to complete before your project can start and before you can receive any grant funding. So you'll be asked to complete your project details. So this will include nominating a finance contact within your organisation who will be the key point of contact for our project finance team when they're completing the viability and eligibility checks. The earlier you can nominate this person, the better. So the sooner we can start running those checks and contacting you and requesting any information, the less likely you are to encounter delays in your project starting. Similarly, please make sure that you provide any additional information that we request in a timely manner and that you respond to any queries that come through as quickly as you can. You will also be asked as part of this section to provide your bank details. So we do have to verify your bank details as part of project setup, and this is just to make sure that the bank details that you've provided us do actually belong to your organisation. So you may be asked at this point to provide a redacted bank statement. We're not interested in anything that's going in and out of the account. We just want to see that those account details that you've provided to us match the account that you have. So in terms of project setup itself, so all grant claiming partners will be asked to complete this process. Again, the lead organisation will have overview of the entirety of project setup. So it's really helpful to us and to your project getting kind of up and running as quickly as possible. If you can keep an eye on how things are progressing and chase any of your collaboration partners who maybe aren't going through the steps as quickly as others. In terms of things you can think about at a fairly early stage, so you can consider who the project manager will be, who the finance contact will be for each consortium member, and how your consortium will be set up. As part of project setup, you'll also be asked to provide a collaboration agreement which has been signed by all parties. So these can quite often be fairly contentious, so we recommend that you start work on these as soon as possible. And some key features that we'd expect to see are who is in the consortium, what are the aims and how is the work divided, any ownership of IP, and who is responsible for the management of the consortium. Just some key points to note in terms of if your project is successful in terms to claiming your grant and the payment of that grant. So all grants are claimable quarterly in arrears. So this is particularly worth bearing in mind if you're an SME because you will have to cash flow the first quarter of your project yourself. Claims can only be made for costs incurred and paid between the project start and end dates. All your claims may be subject to independent audits depending on the grant size, and claims will only be paid once your quarterly reporting and necessary audits are complete. So you will be assigned a monitoring officer as part of project setup who will be your key point of contact during the lifetime of your project, and they will be responsible for monitoring your project against the project plan and financial forecasts that you've provided, and they'll also sign off on any of your claims to make sure that they are in line with the work that you've completed and that they are also in line with what you proposed at the start of your project. In terms of any changes that you want to make to your consortium, please bear in mind that we're not able process any project change requests before the grant offer letter has been issued. So this means that if, say, one of your project partners is unable to meet our financial viability and eligibility criteria checks, they would be asked to withdraw, and you won't be able to replace them with anyone else. And that's all, so I think we're on to questions.
It's question time, and bear in mind that every now and then we will go to the online guys. So anyone with a question? Okay, wait for the mic.
Hi there. So the definition of foundation industries, it's kind of like, as you say, a term that's somewhat new to me, and it's a little bit vague in some areas. How do we get some clearer definition on what constitutes foundation industry?
Ben?
Thank you. Yeah, I recognise it's a made-up term in certain respects. The foundation industries are those 6 sectors. So it's if you're involved in manufacture glass, cement, metals, paper, chemicals, and the last one's gone, ceramics. It's those sectors that are the foundation industries. So if you're involved directly with that, part of that direct supply chain, those are the areas that we're involved in.
Chemicals might need a bit of clarity.
Yeah. And also, so one area I noticed in one of the slides there was bricks, but is that sort of somewhere between ceramics and cement?
Definitely ceramics. And yeah, chemicals, yes, right, it's a bulk chemical end, so it's not the fine or specialty chemicals or pharmaceuticals either.
Okay. Any other? Okay.
Thank you. This is a question for Bimba. You mentioned the importance of collaboration agreements and how long they can take. Bearing in mind your experience and the history of this kind of process, are you able to provide any kind of templates or advice where we should go to kind of get an early start on collaboration?
We can certainly send you a draft collaboration agreement. If you already have collaboration agreements in place relating to other projects that you might have applied for, you're welcome to use those as templates. It doesn't have to be anything new. If you have something within your own organisation that has worked in the past, there's no set format. It's really what works for you, and it's more kind of about the detail of working that out early on. Particularly around contentious issues such as IP ownership. So if there's anything like that within your project, then we'd recommend that you kind of start discussing it as early as possible. Once your project is notified, then you only have 90 days to complete project setup. These are quite fast start projects, so kind of the sooner the better. But certainly if you contact the support email address, they'll be able to send you a sample collaboration agreement.
Just to add my 2 pences with. Collaboration agreement only ever becomes important when things are successful. So what I've turned up to project meetings where it's something, do you know what, this could actually be a flyer now, and then everybody looks around the room and goes, who's going to make money out of this? So it's one of the things that you need to have really frank conversations with your partners very early on and say, this is where I make my money if this is successful, and that really helps the conversation rather than going, oh yes, this is a great idea, we'll all make money somewhere. Be really frank and actually pass it by some lawyers pretty early on.
Okay.
Hi. Is
Steve,
the 50% of total eligible cost for research organisations a special case for this call, or is that a general trend for Innovate UK funded competitions? Because previously it was sort of 30%.
No, so 30% is our standard, but this particular call is 50%.
Thank you.
Okay. Another question there? Aileen?
Just on the collaboration agreement again, would it be okay to have bilateral collaboration agreements with the coordinator? So if there's a lead partner and he has like separate collaboration agreements with each partner, or does he have to be one collaboration agreement by the whole consortium?
In needs to be one collaboration agreement that's signed by all collaboration members. It needs to be an original document. Obviously, that can include particular things relating to particular relationships within the consortium, but it does need to be one document.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. AJ, have you got? Okay. Any more questions? Yeah.
Thanks. So the two categories of funding, industrial research versus experimental development, are there particular TRL levels associated with each of those categories?
Apparently that's a me question. There are EU definitions, I believe, of the difference between industrial research and experimental development. Yes, the nearer the market one, the higher the TRL. I can't recall off the top of my head. I have looked at the document before. Our support will be able to point in that direction very easily.
Okay. Richard.
Yeah, so you noted on it before about the collaboration between at least two sectors, and obviously you can't give £500,000 minus £1 to one sector and 50p to another sector. Have you got any, apart from it being a sensible apportionment between sectors, have you given any more thought or any more stringent guidelines to what kind of division between sectors would be? I mean, if you were looking at a 90-10 split, is that seemed reasonable, or is it going to be on a case-by-case basis?
I think a case-by-case basis. I haven't been on my media training yet, so I can't answer that one. But I can't give you a straight answer because it's one of the things you'd have to see it in the flesh. And I think it's almost more guttural than logical to say, does this look like a reasonable collaboration? And it's perfectly reasonable that one of those two sectors is going to take a lion's share. It could be that actually we're about 80% of the way there here for our sector, but actually we want to try it on these other sectors as well. And that could be that you do end up with it. I'm more than likely expecting projects where you have a majority on one and it's not going to be 50-50 down the middle. But until I see it, no. I mean, yeah, we know that the absolute ridiculous is basically 99% one, 1% the other. That's clearly not a meaningful collaboration. But then from there on out, it's just a grayscale, depending on what is actually happening. Sorry, I can't give you a straight answer.
Okay. Thanks, man. Do you have any more questions? Has anyone appeared online? Okay.
So I have a question. Is there an expectation for, let's say, academic research or the more experimental research to reach the state of commercialization by the end of the 12 months?
The simple answer to that is no. We expect it to be industrially and commercially focused. Sorry, I'll drop it down a bit more. So if it's too blue sky, then it's probably not going to be relevant for this competition. But obviously that's going to be dependent on what the industrial partners want to achieve within that project. So we're not expecting it to be fully commercial by the end of the project. In fact, it probably won't be fully commercial by the end of the project because of the size of the projects and the timescale that's been involved with it. But we do recognise that there's going to be a range between some earlier stage look-see feasibility stuff coming out of universities through to projects which are nearly over the line and actually just need that final push. So there's a wide variety. I would say just probably not back at fundamental drawing board style.
Okay. Are we dry now? If you haven't got a question, have you got a comment you want to offer? Ben's introduction, the background. Yeah, okay.
Question, sorry. So the funding is 5 million and projects between 50k and $500,000. I know it's a difficult question probably to answer, but have you got a rough idea of how the portfolio might look? Or is it just on what comes?
I don't want to colour anyone's answers, so I would say we are really relaxed about what we get, and that is why we've set it between $500,000 and 50k. So please don't try to second guess what everybody else is coming in at. If I get 10 projects at $500,000 each, and those are the 10 projects which we want to fund, we will fund them. If we get my math can't work, 100 projects at 50k each, that's also manageable and doable from our end. So don't worry about it. Do what's sensible for you, and we will pick the better projects. We will do some portfolio selection if necessary, but it probably won't be on value. It'll be more on technology areas.
Okay, thanks, man. Okay. Okay, this is not the only place for you to ask questions, but after you've reflected on this, there's ample opportunity during lunch to catch us. And later on, you've got the contact details for the competition teams, the customer services, and KTN, and you can make contact. So we'll move on to the next part of the agenda. Okay, which is really to do with getting support from the KTN. And you've heard Ben mention that KTN is there to support you. And do take the opportunity that this offer is being made to you. And why KTN? Because KTN is Innovate UK's network partner, believing that the two sides of funding and connecting are both important to get businesses accelerating their innovation. So very important. KTN has a lot to offer. As this slide shows, there's a whole range of things we do offer in support of business innovation. But if you look at the ones that I've circled and the yellow lines, connecting them, these are ones that you can actually take advantage of for this challenge. Making sure that if you want to know who in the other sectors you should partner with, and your usual tendency is to work within your own sector, the challenge here is to work across sectors. You can come to the KTN to introduce you to others, like-minded people in other sectors. We will be happy to do that. If you're looking for support and you want a critical friend to look at your proposal as you're developing them, particularly if this is the first time you're putting together an application for Innovate UK funding, we will be able to support you. We will be your critical friend. We will not write the proposal for you, so be mindful of that. Don't come up with an idea and a few words in answer to each of the 11 questions and expect KTN to build on that for you. You need to actually just go through your thoughts, do as complete a draft as you can with questions that you want to ask, and we will look at it and we'll be your critical friend. Okay? We're not proposal writers. We'll critique. And the other one is if you want to actually share your idea, as things you've heard here, the challenge, the introduction Ben gave, the reason for this challenge, and you want to take a strategic sort of stance in actually communicating some ideas back to BASE, Innovate UK, UKRI, and you actually want to discuss that, we'll be able to help you. We'll be able to help you look at things like your business planning you're doing and how this particular competition fits into delivering your own strategic plans. It might be it takes you away from it. If you're a tech provider and you want to know how to get into the steel industry or the concrete cement industry or the glass industry, ceramics, paper or bulk chemicals, and you've not dealt with the foundation industry before, but you've got a technology that answers those technology challenges. And we do get this from the energy providers. And first time really dealing with these sectors, we'll be able to help you with some insights about the sectors. So do make contact with us. And we'll help you. If you look at the navigation side, we'll actually help you to navigate a wide range of offers that are there in terms of supporting innovation, as well as how to build your innovation case, and different suppliers of innovation products that are there will help you to actually make sure you're up to scratch in terms of how you handle innovation. So the innovation process itself. And why can we do that? Why are we making this offer? We're an organization that has a wide range expertise in a whole range of technology, sector, design, and commercial. And we have a community, which includes a number of you here, who you've signed up to us and you said you're happy to share your knowledge and expertise, and you're happy to partner on innovation projects. We've got about 60,000 organizations that we keep in touch with, and 90,000 individuals within this innovation space, not just for this challenge, as you can see in the different sectors and technology areas we look at. So we offer that based on the people we have and the systems we have to be able to support you. So tap into it. And the other thing, we will work with you on a one-to-one basis, whether online or face-to-face, to get the best out of any innovation process you have. We've been trying some as best practice, and we have one we've shared at some of the workshops called the Innovation Canvas, our shortcut to actually being able to generate ideas and flesh out those ideas and look at the pinch points and how you can address those. So there are three things, key drivers that we want to have a conversation around that are linked very much to you answering those 11 questions. And it's the offer, what you've got on offer, your capability to actually deliver that offer, and your opportunity. This is a collaborative project, and therefore really will apply to your consortium. So it might be that you haven't got a complete consortium because you don't have the confidence that you've got all those three things working together. And there you find you need more action before you submit an application to go out there and seek where the gaps are to fill those gaps in. And we can help you through that conversation identify where the gaps are. So yes, we'll help you to look at your strengths and weaknesses as individual organizations or as a consortium. Find out the things that you know or don't know, your unknown unknowns, and articulate those well in answer to the 11 questions. Decide what you want to do next. Identify your top challenges and what actions you need to take. We will help you in that conversation to do that. And our aim is to help you to prepare the best application you can. Okay, and I emphasize that you can, not the best application we've seen, because as you will share with us, others have shared with us, and we keep a strict confidentiality. So it is what you can, what you bring to us, and we'll try to make it better, help you to make it better. Okay. We will highlight within what you've shared with us, what you need to include, and what is actually taking too much space and is better not in there. And share with you what the assessors are looking for, which you will already have in the guidance to applicants, because the guidance to applicants is the same thing that is shared with the assessors. The communication goes, assessors, we've told the applicants to look to answer these questions and these sub-questions. Assessors see how well they've done in answering those. So the guidance to assessors, the marking scheme, is not too different to the guidance that have been given to applicants. So answer those questions well, and you will get the scores you need. To help capture best practice as best as we can, we've got a top 10 tips. Used to be classically 10 applications, questions on the application form. Ben and team have added an 11th one on skills. So we have a top 10 on the sort of the traditional application form. And I'm sure you can address your skills needs very well as well. If you would like a copy, if you haven't got a copy, if you'd like a copy, just let myself or AJ know. Our email addresses are on the next slide. Ask us and we will send you a copy. The reason why we wouldn't offer it to all delegates is because some of you have copies. Okay, so if you haven't got a copy of this and you would like to have a look at it, we will share that with you. Okay, so that's my email address and AJ's email address. You can contact any one of us. Okay. Collaboration, and that emphasis has been made. Collaboration actually helps and helps to, as we say, leapfrog the value of deaf. So it's important you take that collaboration challenge very seriously. And Ben, you've answered the question in terms of what proportion, but there is a proportion of which the other sector isn't, it come across as they're not well committed to help you jump that gap. Is a wide gap, that value of deaf. So whoever your collaborative partner is need to pull their weight. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to jump over that gap. Okay, so just bear that in mind. Don't just put a name on the paper. They have to give you help. Okay, so that's for KTN, and we're here to support you, support your individual needs. The other thing we do, and for that reason we invited a number of you, well, in fact all of you who signed up to take the opportunity to do our 2-minute pitch. You've got 2 slides each, and we had a response from 5. So for the benefit of this long session and those online, we're going to restrict to the 5 that have submitted slides. After these, during lunch and the networking session, we have something called the Collaboration Corner, and that is an opportunity for you to meet people on a one-to-one basis. So those who want to meet others, declare to us that you've got an idea you want to be able to share with others, and we will make arrangements for you to have a space, for you to have a chat. Okay, so this pitch is just for the 5 organizations that have actually sent their slides in. So we will start in the order that's there. So if you can see your name, just follow one after the other. Okay, so we'll start with you, Alex. Where are you? Thanks, Rob. Okay, so just forward.
2 minutes?
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Hello, everybody. My name's Alex Appelby. I run a small technology company called Metis Labs. So I come from the manufacturing sector as my background. And what I found is in a wide range of plants, and particularly prevalent in the foundation industries, is as we digitalize plants, there's still a really important factor that's missing, and that's the knowledge that's inside of operators' heads. So those of you who've worked in production plants will probably know there's always a guy on day shift, on night shift, who knows the process, monitors how it performs, and fine-tunes the recipe accordingly. Now, that works okay, but as you can imagine, it also creates huge losses. And as we try to digitalize plants, it needs to be addressed. That's what we're taking on. So we've been working for the last 2.5 years on this challenge. We've previously been awarded an Innovate UK grant, which we're just coming towards the end of now, to develop the early stages of the technology. We implement our technology on the production floor. We use machine learning to basically replicate what the operators are doing, monitoring the process and understanding how all of those input parameters and control parameters and ambient conditions actually affect the quality of the product. So our customers so far have been based in Europe. We're a UK company, so we have early stage demonstrators in a brick plant and in a bulk chemicals plant. We're now looking to deploy the next stage of development in the UK. We're a UK company. We want to make use of this grant and we want to support the UK sector. So I'm very interested to talk to anybody who is from any of the foundation industries, but particularly also from ceramics, bulk chemicals, about how we can actually benefit from this work we've previously done with Innovate grants and in Europe and bring it to the UK. Thank you.
Good morning. Oh, good afternoon. No, just good morning still. My name is Bob Park. I'm Director of Cryogen Energy. We are a startup company, very new in the UK, early days of development, and our focus is in the production and the use of cryogenic liquids to deal with various different aspects of challenges around industrial plants, etc. Our technology basically comes from the Far East, but we're looking to develop the second generation technology in UK, and that's why we formed the company. The technology uses an innovative cryogenic recycling in order to separate and liquefy gases. These gases can then be used in various aspects of industry. One example would be enriched oxygen in the steel industry, for example, but it's also very useful in dealing with emissions, and this is where we think perhaps in this particular funding call that this would be an interesting part of what we might contribute to this. The separation of the gases, generally we separate air into its constituent gases, but the reality is we can separate any gaseous mixture. So if you can imagine lots of industrial plants which have got very high emissions issues, we can separate these emissions, produce commercially usable product from the emissions. So our interest really is in talking to and in meeting partners that have got challenges in that regard within their industry or across industry. So we can help them with these challenges, perhaps produce something which is got cross-use in another industry. And I say, very new to the business, very new to KTN. So it's very interesting to hear all the sort of assistance and such like that you may be able to give, and I'd love to talk to you about that later, Robert. And if there's anyone in the room that is interested in chatting, very pleased to chat over lunch or afterwards. Thank you very much.
As well.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Gida, and I'm a product executive of Envopop. So today I'm going to talk about my startup company. So mainly we are a sustainable material solution startup company. We use green technology to give agricultural waste a second life. So basically what we do is we do paper out of sugarcane waste. So once the sugarcane is being harvested and extracted, we use it to produce paper, because we don't want to cut trees, and usually what they do after harvesting it is burning it. So also we are reducing CO2 emissions. So our paper is basically biodegradable, recyclable, compostable, and marine degradable. And we are looking to use our material and innovate it for several applications. Mainly we are looking at replacing single-use plastic in food packaging. So we are here to see if we can collaborate with chemicals company that can help us innovate our material, which is our paper, to make it food grade, for food grade applications, and basically have this plant-based coating, or a coating that still aligns with our purpose and is can be applied for food. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Shangxi Wen from JJ Bioenergy. Yep. Oh, no. I need yeah. So we are a process engineering company, focusing on industrial energy efficiency. Our proposal is to integrate thermal energy storage with the industrial process. So the thermal energy storage that's based on the composite phase change material. We, in last 3 years, we got 2 projects funded by Innovate UK. both of them that's based on the thermal energy storage. One as a feasibility study, the other one as industrial research. The latest one, as we use that to convert this surplus electricity to high temperature heat, and then store that heat, and then supply heat. So we also, can recover the industrial waste heat at a very high temperature. So, then we offer this improved energy efficiency, also make full use of your material. This proposal, we try to use the residue from the industrial use as the structural material of our composite phase change material. So that's, for example, we use the steel slug as the structural material, make the composite phase change material, and also recover the waste heat in your process, and then recycle that to supply heat, or use the heat at the site. So we are looking for the industrial partners. At the moment, we cooperating with Birmingham University, Birmingham Center for Energy Storage. Last 2 projects we are partners. So that's, we have that partnership already, but we'll welcome the industrial partners. Yeah, that's it. Please feel free to take a picture and, come to have a chat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Phineas. I actually went to school with Alex, which is really strange. So I don't know how that's happened. I'm here with Andy. We work with Kaput Energy, for Kaput Energy. I am from the restaurant sector, and the commercial kitchens are the largest waster and user of energy in commercial premises. So we've come up with a project with a small partner called Chapman Ventilation, who are a large ventilation company, and we've developed a system to capture, reuse, turn some into electricity, and also reuse waste heat in warming some water, heating the restaurant and other places. Obviously, this is a slightly untapped market, so there's a big market for us to go to. Unfortunately, it's not one of the foundation industries, but we can obviously transfer this technology, low and medium heat capture, into these other sectors. So we'd love to meet some people and talk further about how we can heat some water or give you some free electricity. Well, nothing's free, but recycle some electricity for you. Any technical questions, please ask Andy, because he's the clever one. That's it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, you were standing between us and lunch, so the last one. Aileen, how are we doing?
Early.
Okay. So I know you've thanks for sitting through. We've done our best to make sure you do get a break. So coffee is served, and then we'll have upstairs, is it? Yeah, coffee's upstairs, and then lunch will follow. But take the opportunity to network. Do contact Aileen, AJ, or myself if you're interested in having conversations around what we're calling the innovation collaboration corner, which is really an area for one-to-one meetings. If you would like to meet someone and you have an idea, let us know, and we'll make sure that we share and identify who within the amongst you will be willing and able to talk to you. Okay?
Whereabouts is this collaboration corner?
In here. Yeah, in here. But you have your own informal way of doing it, I'm sure. You're going to meet each other and have a chat around coffee and then lunch later on. But if you find yourself not being able to corner someone in a collaboration corner and you want our help, then do come to us. Okay? So thanks. Our coffee upstairs. Okay. Thank you. And thanks to those online. AJ? Okay. Thanks.